In the aftermath of loss, the air hangs heavy with sorrow and unspoken truths, a landscape where shadows stretch longer, cast by the dim glow of flickering memories. Some betrayals echo louder in silence than in screams. Margaret stands in this somber arena, a figure cloaked not in the dark robes of grief, but in the silent armor of a quiet dignity ready to fray. She is not merely a mother mourning her son. She is the eye of a storm that brews under the veil of mourning. Carla, her daughter-in-law, moves like a specter draped in a facade of widowhood, yet there is steel in her glance and a tremor of intent in her voice. She is less a grieving widow, more an architect of her future. Her words cut through the air sharp and unyielding. Margaret feels their weight not just in the explicit command to leave the place she once called home, but in the implication of her displacement during this time of vulnerability. Carla's intentions, veiled but clear, are not merely disruptors of Margaret's stability, they are declarations of ownership over terrain and dominion over Margaret's remaining ties to her son. You might find yourself questioning, how does one grieve the loss of a progeny while simultaneously defending against the steady encroachment of betrayal? Think of Margaret as an ancient oak, her roots deep, unyielding, and intertwined with a resolute spirit that defies the oncoming storm. Silence, that hollow void she inhabits now, is her space of reflection, a waiting ground for strategy. It is in these moments of quiet that Margaret confronts the echoes of her past decisions, grapples with the icy tendrils of regret about unmade choices, words unsaid, boundaries uncrossed. Such introspection underlines the paradox of her position. Society's expectations of the grieving mother stand at odds with the necessity of embracing the warrior within. The house, a bastion of memories shared and days past, now stands on the precipice of transition, darkened not by night, but by the shadows of greed and betrayal inching ever closer. She thought his silence meant surrender. It was strategy. One does not underestimate the quiet power of the underestimated. Margaret, in a singular moment of clarity, recognizes the battlefield for what it is: psychological warfare clothed in grief's guise. Those silent halls, once echoing with the laughter and tears of family, now bear witness to an unspoken mounting tension. A space both familiar and foreign, holding stories only she knows, and shadows she must learn to navigate anew. Why, indeed, would such a figure imbued with grace and steeped in loyalty remain wordless against such clear affronts? Fear, perhaps, of disturbing the fragile peace her son so artfully crafted in life? Or is it wisdom, an understanding that battles are not always won with swords forged of words, but rather with minds sharpened through deliberate contemplation? There is power in stillness. Margaret's silence is not a retreat, but a gathering of strength and absorbance of the truth now laid bare. Each moment of perceived passivity is a strategic move in a game of emotional chess. She knows that the world perceives silence as submission, yet within her, it is a tool, one to be wielded with precision and patience. You might consider what Margaret's next moves are. Would she bend to the will of one who seeks to erase her presence, her history, or does she rise like phoenix from ashes, to reclaim the narrative of her life, to reaffirm her place, not just in this home, but in the legacy of her son? This is not a civil drama of familial discourse, but a battleground where layers of kinship and emotion lay entwined within the dictates of survival and reclamation. Margaret, the silent oak, knows a profound truth: some kings do not roar, they wait and then erase. Her existence in this pivotal moment belies submission. It prepares for the unfurling of justice's banner, commanded by quiet grace and strategic resolve. Carla's assumption rests on her view of Margaret's silence as acquiescence, an oversight she will come to regret. There are men who become sharper in the silence of betrayal, and women who in their quietude find the strength not just to endure but to overcome. Margaret stands at this crucible's edge, resolved to reclaim what is rightfully hers, not through empty displays of power, but through the quiet and steadfast reclamation of dignity. Her journey, intricate and fraught with tension, begins its silent ascent from these very shadows as the night yields slowly to the cold dawn of her resolve. During the wake, shrouded in grief and dense with whispers of betrayal, Margaret found herself at a precipice, staring into an abyss carved not by time, but by the sharpened edges of familial treachery. As she moved quietly through the rooms where echoes of her son Thomas still lingered, she felt the cruel bite of Carla's words, thinly veiled threats cloaked in the language of a widow falsely aggrieved. Carla, astute in her manipulations, seized the moment to declare her intentions with cold precision, seeking to displace Margaret not just from the home but from her role within their family's tale. The moment was flavored with a bitterness only betrayal could concoct, a poignant cocktail Margaret had tasted, though perhaps not as acutely felt since standing at the crucible of her youth. Those who underestimated her saw only her silence, but beneath the surface silent intentions coiled into plans. She understood that true power did not need to shout across rooms or echo in grand gestures. It ripened in quiet resolve, calculated in its application, and definitive in its course. Margaret would not be banished to obscurity, not by Carla, nor by any temporal twist daring to diminish her maternal legacy. So when they reached that pivotal moment at the reading of the will, Carla, perched confidently at the periphery of the lawyer's solemnly lit office, wore a smile faintly edged with satisfaction. Her demeanor spoke of victory tasted too soon of an adversary dismissed. The air hung heavy with her assumptions, pregnantly poised to deliver a misjudged reality. She believed she knows the contents of this will. In her hubris, she had carved narratives into stones, never meant for her hands. But the day was not one for foregone conclusions. The ink of fate was yet to dry, and justice, though slow, would outpace the hasty proclamations of the unwise. Silence was quickly displaced by the rattling revelation of parchment. Each page turned a step toward reparation. Margaret alone comprehended in full. As the lawyer announced Thomas's will, Margaret's years of silent endurance bore fruit unexpected by her adversary. Her son, though gone, had woven a netting of security, a testament to forethought honed by love. Layer by layer, the reality unfolded itself before the gathering, a surprise concealed beneath a veneer of presumed dominance. Carla's intentions unraveled, snagged on a plan she understood too late to be not of her orchestration, but rather a foreseen folly by one who loved both wisely and well. Margaret's son, with foresight sharpened by caution, had insulated her against unjust, ousting his testament, reasserting her place, her protection. Thomas had composed his intentions with precision and clarity that cut through Carla's machinations like a righteous scythe, and in that instant, Margaret felt the shift toward reclamation. She had been humiliated. Now she would rise armored not in wrath but in justice, each step deliberate and every move calculated, like chess pieces aligning toward inevitable checkmate. The newfound knowledge of her son's protective measures was no mirage. It was a beacon for what came next. Shock ceded space to action, to engagement with truths embedded in documents, each clause a fortress not just of financial entitlement, but of dignity restored. In the depths of morning's silhouette, Margaret perceived clarity. Her journey was coming full circle, the dynamics of power realigning in patterns echoing resilience. The fortifications set by Thomas's hand carved a path for Margaret's resolve to follow, substantiating her place in this narrative not as a supporting figure but as the matriarch, with rights incontestable. As pages exchanged hands, each signature confirming rightful ownership, the air around them recalibrated. The balance tipped, precarious yet definite, setting the stage for acts yet unwritten, but foreseen by those possessing wisdom, often underappreciated by the unwise. In those moments marked by revelation, one witnessed not merely a mother discovering her rights, but a woman reaffirming her presence, standing steadfast in the inheritance of integrity gifted by her son. The silenced oak rumbled to life, its roots deep and unassailable. Her reclaiming was not for her alone but for all who had been onlookers in microcosms of injustice, watching silently from within their own cages, carved from similar inequities. This moment was but the first tremor in a greater upheaval, a dawn just beginning to chase the dusk that had too long held sway. Margaret's silence was no longer an acquiescence. It was her clarion call to arms, to prepare for a campaign prepared in the name of love, justice, and reclamation. The thaw of this cold dawn would bring with it the warmth of sunlight, stolen but eagerly returned. For in reclaiming these stones and timbers, Margaret was rescuing not just a home but securing a legacy, inscribing a tale with strength, crafted by eyes taught to see beyond appearances, into truths now ready to be ushered into existence once. more. Margaret's awakening was both profound and purposeful, driven by the tangible remnants of Thomas's foresight, now revealed in the elegantly understated envelope that she held with trembling resolve. The revelations within a key, a note, and the path to a safety deposit box were not merely documents but a lifeline. Each was a testament to Thomas's deep understanding of the woman he called mother, offering her a shield long before the storm clutched at their lives. In uncovering these safeguards, Margaret found more than just leverage. She discovered an awakening within herself, driven by a mixture of justified anger and the cold assurance of justice promised. Imagine the instant when a life-filtering piece falls firmly into place, a sensation known well to those too long adrift. Thomas had not just anticipated but meticulously chronicled Margaret's financial interactions, her vital contributions to their family abode. What appeared at first to Margaret as tokens of lost time were in reality the very weapons she needed in her far from magnificent war. His wisdom, mirrored in the pricking of inked paper, exposed Carla's web of deceit and left her machinations as bare as winter's barren trees. These layered discoveries forced Margaret to reckon with newfound power, one she had long been denied under layers of perceived submissiveness. The burdens Margaret carried from before seemed suddenly lighter as her journey transformed from one of passive acceptance to active reclamation. Hers was not simply a battle for monetary gain or personal vendetta, but a stride toward equity and deserved recognition. As this transition unfolded, her actions transcended personal strife to become the poignant echo for many who faced similar systemic reductions across their own narratives. Resolute, she determined to counter every dishonest tilt of fortune that had swayed her life, strengthened by truths clad in undeniable legalities. Margaret's entry into the office of Richard Thomas's lawyer was heralded by a quiet confidence born of necessity rather than choice. Deliberately, with meticulous attention paid to each detail as Richard elucidated, she navigated the specters of legal jargon and courtsman facia, suffusing her own vulnerability with the armament of fact. This consul became more than a mere informant. Richard embodied the mirror reflecting her struggle, willing to draw the sword of legislation and prepare for confrontation against decades of unacknowledged injustice. Here Margaret not only found legal allyship but connection across previously perceived adversarial design. Carla, who for so long thought herself unassailable in her perceived dominion, would find herself unexpectedly cornered, unable to withstand the pressure of Thomas's revelations and the steady, insistent insistence of Margaret's righteousness. In the inevitable confrontation, the documents played their symphonic might, singing truth's modest harmony against Carla's discordant dissonance of betrayal. There was a delicious irony in watching the unraveling of Carla's plans, meticulously worked but vulnerable to the probing clarity of evidence. Against this, Margaret's bedrock was now the immovable truth etched into the foundations of the law, bathed in a spotlight dimmed neither by deception nor denial. The legal intricacies resembled a dance with chaos, each party entwined in the silent waltz of strategy, thrust, and parry. Yet Margaret's grace in this legal choreography arose from a newfound courage. The balance of power had recalibrated before Carla's eyes, as every hurt lingered within Margaret turned tactician and warrior. Few saw beyond Margaret's poised exterior the fierce maternal instinct demanding justice for Thomas's final act of devotion. Each procedural maneuver became her rebuttal against the sanctioned sorrow she was expected to accept. As the storm settled, the house, once an arena of imbalance, felt different under Margaret's watchful gaze. The keys no longer symbolized a singular access, but carried the weight of memory and of future promise, a duality infusing the new chapters ahead. Though the shared roof remained, its very rafters seemed etched with the narratives Margaret was reclaiming. With each step through the homestead, echoes of unchained jubilation within her heart resonated through the walls, bolder and braver than ever. Together, these patterns wove the tapestry of a life no longer defined by shadows of others' decisions, but by Margaret's indomitable will. Though challenges lay in living parallel to Carla, Margaret knew that existence was not defined by avoidance of conflict, but by backbone and bearings forged in the reality where clarity and courage reign. Her sights now fixed beyond immediate horizons, Margaret's journey lingered in the hope that remains. When night falls, a quiet determination strengthened by the spirit of a son who continued to guide her pathway toward the promise of dawn. Richard, the seasoned legal sage and Thomas's trusted counsel, stood before Margaret with a solemn resolve etched into his visage. His eyes, wise and keen, studied the papers that lay before him, a collection of calculated foresight and protective love forged by Thomas himself. The lawyer, a stalwart figure in his late 60s, infused an air of meticulous professionalism into every silence and nod shared with Margaret. His presence was a testament to the intricate dance of justice awaiting Margaret's steps, a journey punctuated by emotions tethered to the deep and subtle throes of betrayal and survival. Indoors, beneath the subdued lights of the law office, Margaret battled a gamut of emotions, the weight of loss battled with an urgent, almost desperate need for retribution and justice. The documents were not just papers. They were lifelines crafted by a sun both protective and prescient, casting shadows long enough to stretch into her darkest hours. Thomas had anticipated treachery, leaving behind a legal roadmap, a testament to blood ties and indelible love. Richard, aware of the gravity within each fold and seal, wasted no time in affirming their authenticity. His voice, rich with authority, weaved explanations around trusts, property rights, and legal standing that fortified Margaret's rightful claims. Legal entanglements loomed, but Margaret felt buoyed. With Richard's guidance, shades of despair began to slough away. She perceived a dawn, not too distant, silhouetted against cypress branches of the law. But the path was fraught with complexity. The very act of stepping into this battlefield opened old wounds, the kind expectations left unattended and untended. The intricacies of legal proceedings, with their daunting language and seasoned adversities, demanded not only sharp focus but emotional resilience. Margaret, emboldened by the unexpected alliance, embraced each legal wrinkle as a challenge to be mastered. Richard, more than a mere gatekeeper of the law, became an ally, a faithful bridge to a reality where she no longer stood alone. In him she saw another version of Thomas's protective essence, a strategist capable of turning legal parameters into strategic advantage. Every meeting brought a vocabulary of courage, soundlessly mingling with the bones of steel she was growing under his tutelage. Richard handed Margaret plans that would allow her to resume agency over her own narrative, a potent antidote to despair. Within the rhythmic cadence of legal jargon and the reassurance in Richard's tone, Margaret sensed a reprise of quiet strength. Those sessions fortified her with knowledge, bridging the gap between awareness and action. However, amidst the clarity of law, Margaret discerned an underlying homage to truth, a truth that moved beyond courtroom rhetoric, seeking to heal the fractured trust time had marred. With each stride into this venture, Margaret faced an internal dialogue, often brutal in its honesty, compelling her to confront her fears and vulnerabilities. The legal currents cut deeper than anticipated, reminding her of shared histories with Carla, histories now transformed into contentious territories fraught with power struggles. Evenings crept in, and the solitude whispered uncertainties, but Margaret, armed with insights from legal meetings, turned shadows into stepping stones. There was a liberation in knowledge, a grounded tactician's delight in turning probable odds into anchored victories. She was reclaiming pieces of a life thought lost, a reclamation less about revenge and more about dignity and restoration. Richard's strategic maneuvers, built on calm negotiations and decisive filings, framed a larger picture where legal rights underpinned moral imperatives. He ensured Margaret's case was crafted not just with the coldness of legality, but with the warmth of familial justice, a plot not only to re-establish physical possession, but to rejuvenate spirit and soul. In their last session of the week, Richard pressed into action, reports prepared for the upcoming showdown, a confrontation summoned at the intersection of legality and emotion. In those moments, Margaret's former uncertainties fell away, replaced by a purpose outlined in precisions and heartfelt affirmations. Under the persistent hum of the ceiling fan, Margaret's mind painted futures aspiring to new beginnings. The right to feel safe within her walls, to guard cherished memories, and to echo her son's foresight into lasting legacies fueled her resolve. Legal help engaged became more than just salvaging a home. It evolved into rekindling hope and courage stitched into the fabric of persistence and love. Together, Richard and Margaret crafted a pathway forged by conviction. The battles ahead, while tinged with hurt and history, were interwoven with possibilities to renew foundations laid by Thomas. Margaret's journey under Richard's watchful eye expanded beyond litigation. It was becoming a study in resilience community and the enduring power of love manifesting itself through law and maternal strength. In the echo of footsteps across polished floors and the rustle of papers within the intricate weave of hidden tensions and legal ramifications, Margaret and Carla faced off in the sterile setting of the lawyer's office. This moment was a crescendo not of anger but of a cold, calculated assertion of truth and rights. What began as Margaret's silent determination had crescendoed into a tableau of confrontation where the veneer of civility barely masked the tensions simmering beneath the surface. Margaret's composure was a masterpiece forged in steel, as Richard methodically laid out the revelation of Thomas's foresight papers and documents, forming a keystone that uncovered the duplicity lying at the heart of Carla's intentions. Slowly but surely, like pieces of a puzzle being assembled, the evidence brought to light the meticulous planning Thomas had undertaken, safeguarding his mother's future while unwittingly exposing his partner's darker ambitions. For Carla, this was the unraveling of her schemes, her illusions of control dissipating like mist under the glare of undeniable truth. The foundation upon which she had built her narratives began to crumble, every sentence, every clause in the contracts, an icicle piercing through her manufactured reality. Richard's steady voice delineated each aspect of the legal guarantees that Thomas couldn't have left to chance, making it abundantly clear that the house was not simply a material asset but a stronghold of sentimental and moral value placed beyond Carla's solitary reach. In the shifting sands beneath Carla's feet, she found herself indicting not just by treachery, but by the reckoning of trust, betrayed under the guise of familial loyalty. Every word Richard articulated was not merely a fact but a strike against Carla's facade of entitlement. Margaret, galvanized by the weight of maternal teachings and the law's firm grip, stood resiliently, her gaze unwavering, her determination gaining momentum with each passing second. She was no longer a passive participant, but the rightful accuser in a narrative rife with betrayal and unmasking. The complexity of Thomas's preemptive measures revealed a man who understood not just his wife's capacity for deception, but foresaw the potential exploitation of his mother's vulnerability. The deeds, the financial breakdowns, and the boundary markers of his will acted as a cacophony, illuminating Thomas's character, a son's love transcending death, to protect those whose yardsticks of love were unwavering. To Carla, each new item presented was a novel saline wound on already battered pride, her defenses dissolving into irrelevance. The legal wording became as damning as any spoken accusation. Each incontrovertible proof bore down on her, and what Margaret had to endure emotionally was brought to the surface, yet not as a victim but a victor reclaiming agency. In this crucible where emotive family ties met the dispassionate arm of the law, you're made to reckon with the distortions bred by unchecked ambition. Observe the stark reality where legal execution meets moral challenge, where a crushed illusion breeds a new order fueled by justice and raw resilience. How does one confront the multiplicity of betrayal with the dignified hand of due process? This answer lives in Margaret's steadfast refusal to relinquish her dignity, her integrity, a remaining strength poised resolutely against familial subterfuge. As the confrontation closed, Margaret didn't raise her voice. The courtroom was her ally, the words her weapon. Carla, cornered, stood before the coalition of law and love, armored with the dual shields of evidence and inevitability. It was not a closure defined solely by victory or defeat. Instead, it marked the beginning of an enforced accountability, a severance staked by resolutions more enduring than any blood tie could declare null. The dust settled, underscoring a powerful tribute to foresight. This showdown paved a pathway to reclaim not only property, but an ethical sanctum built by a mother's love and a son's intelligent endowment. As Carla reeled in her silent acceptance of truth, Margaret emerged unshackled, bolstered by both the past's melancholy and the future's resilience, a narrative of resurgence that pivoted not on vengeance but justice achieved through clarity and unyielding conviction. As Margaret settled back into her home, the atmosphere remained heavy with the echoes of a fractured family. Her re-entry into her own house was not marked by triumph but by a tense negotiation of space, with Carla a dance of subtle displays of power and vulnerability. The walls seemed to enforce silence, only shattered by the sound of footsteps. Here, Margaret's resolve would be tested in ways the courtroom never could. Her quest for dignity had been supported by law, but standing within her home, the landscape of a new normal emerged, one conjured not from court decrees but from the delicate art of coexistence amid distrust. Moving through familiar corridors, Margaret reclaimed rooms one object at a time. Each item she rearranged stood as a testament to her resilience, signifying not mere possession, but a retaking of life's narrative. To reclaim her home was to re-establish her presence, to serve notice that she would not be pushed aside again. In living spaces now shared with Carla, every choice held the weight of an unspoken declaration of a past remembered, a present confronted, and a future yet to be molded. The chessboard on the kitchen table symbolized more than a game. It embodied a psychological contest played out daily, a microcosm of their enforced partnership. Margaret understood that a quiet fortitude was paramount. She focused on being a pillar of strength for her grandson Lucas, whose innocent perception of the situation served as a guiding light. Lucas, with all his youthful curiosity, became the bridge she needed to maintain an uneasy peace. It was for him that she endured terse interactions with Carla, calibrated her words carefully to maintain an equilibrium, and prompted moments of gentleness among the sharp edges of their shared history. Carla, feeling the walls of her plans close in around her, swung between bouts of defiance and moments of resignation. She was not accustomed to sharing power. The house, now bearing witness to her defeated ambitions, stood as a daily reminder of the fallibility of control rooted in manipulation. Margaret observed Carla, quietly aware that analyzing her adversary provided insights into both her motivations and her vulnerabilities. The glances Carla threw across the room spoke of more than mere irritation. They held the pain of dreams unfulfilled, of a life unraveling in unexpected ways. Yet, despite all, it was the legal victory that established Margaret's unshakable dominion. She approached her home life with the same measured determination that defined her courtroom demeanor, a careful balance of tenacity and tact. Concessions did not mean surrender, and in her heart, she was resolute. Margaret aimed to not only thrive in the physical space of her home, but to cultivate an emotional habitat in which her grandson could flourish. In this tentative peace, a delicate web of new routines emerged. Meals were prepared in silence that was both heavy and contemplative, providing moments to rehearse conversations that would facilitate coexistence rather than competition. The garden, now a place for respite, became an unspoken neutral territory where Margaret could sometimes find Carla tending to the flowers. Here lay a fragile truce, grounded in the shared knowledge that the house belonged to their combined past and its future legacy. As the days passed, Margaret's strategies for enduring this imposed arrangement became more refined. Legal justice had awarded her ownership, but true victory lay in weaving peace on a tapestry of companionship for Lucas. Her days were now filled with teaching, guiding, and showing her grandson the importance of grace under pressure. The task of living under the same roof as Carla often felt like navigating a minefield, yet it sharpened Margaret's resolve. It reminded her daily of the necessity of patience, vigilance, and the soft power of compassion. The weapons of her arsenal were now forged not from law books, but from richness of spirit and depth of empathy. Margaret's ability to remain steadfast in her purpose provided a reassuring anchor for Lucas, who flickered between boyhood innocence and the inevitability of maturing. His questions were not asked in accusatorial tones, but with genuine curiosity that begged for truth. Teaching him the value of discretion, trust, and forgiveness became Margaret's most sacred task, setting a course for the kind of legacy she wanted to leave. Her journey had transformed from a battle over property to one of cultivating hope. Beyond victory, the true gift was the unearthing of new beginnings hidden among debris of discord. Margaret showed that justice paved the way, but it was integrity that lit the path to healing. Her life had now found its rhythm, not one marked by deceit and betrayal, but rather by the orchestration of heartbeats eternally in step with perseverance and love. The house echoed with concealment, shadowed corners harboring more than just dust. As Margaret moved through the familiar, albeit strained space, she encountered clues that painted a portrait of her late son Thomas's life that she had never seen. Her hands moved mechanically, opening drawers and filing through documents until they fell upon an innocuously positioned folder. It spoke in whispers of bank transactions and property transfers. The contents told a story of hidden intentions, one woven meticulously by Carla. It was as though her daughter-in-law had systematically built a web, any one misstep, potentially disastrous but expertly disguised by a silken veneer of plausible deniability. Questions ballooned with every note her eyes scanned. Margaret's heart beat in synchronization with a symphony of emotions: anger, resolve, determination to uncover the truth behind this facade. She began to suspect that perhaps Thomas's death was not as accidental as she had been led to believe. The clues were circumstantial whispers of irregularities in accounts and unexplained withdrawals, but they ignited a suspicion that nestled deeply within her. A suspicion that drove her to dig deeper into Carla's past actions. As Margaret flipped through pages, the notion crystallized that Carla had woven a fraudulent narrative around Thomas's demise, one possibly underpinned by sinister motivations. Beneath the surface of grief, beneath the layers of familial duty, lay a motivation energized by justice. The revelations pushed her to consider legal action not just as a tool for survival but as a means to honor her son's memory. Margaret understood the delicate yet grim realities of dealing with criminal intent, cloaked in domesticity, a moral and legal labyrinth she intended to navigate with care. Margaret cast the net wider, involved investigators to discuss her suspicions. What did Lucas, or more precisely his future, deserve? The question fueled her resolve. Justice in this case was more than the arrest of a suspect. It was about halting a cycle of deceit, about shielding Lucas from a legacy clad in betrayal. The days stretched on as Margaret braced for what lay ahead, her mind a medley of pieces and puzzles, each shaping a narrative that had to see the light. Conversations with old friends revealed anecdotes of Carla's earlier life, adding brushstrokes to the portrait Margaret was piecing together. She contacted Detective Garcia, an old acquaintance experienced in such intricate situations, to look deeper into Carla's machinations. It was no longer merely about the house or the will, but an excavation into layers concealed by facades of civility and trust. Margaret was aware of the moral tightrope she walked. To pull the yarn of Carla's deceit might mean unknown ramifications, but some truths once uncovered demanded justice above all else. She pondered the lengths to which Carla might have gone in a bid for control, what might have been sacrificed on this altar of ambition. This trajectory of inquiry was no longer just about recovery or restoration, it was a path of revelation demanding courage and requiring resolve. Insights came piecemeal, leading towards the enigma that surrounded Thomas's end. Margaret's pursuit for answers transcended personal vindication. It became a campaign for ethical restoration, a battle for clarity in a world clouded by manipulation. As leads pointed to possible foul play in her son's death, Margaret grappled with the gravity of burgeoning revelations. Did the end justify the means? And yet, as truths emerged, their weight irrevocably altered the landscape of her perception. Were there clues she had missed in the days leading to Thomas's demise? How intricately laced were Carla's schemes? These were the thoughts that hastened Margaret's steps as she traversed rooms hallowed by memory and haunted by lost spaces, where shadows whispered their secrets against walls that bore silent testimony to a strategically crafted charade. Amid her strategizing and conversations with authorities, Margaret discovered resilience she had long forgotten. Her love for Lucas, sharpened by the sword of adversity, became the lodestar, guiding her steps through a labyrinth of suspicion and legal complexities. She championed not just the rights of her family but the very essence of trust, so trampled by Carla's guile. What had been one woman's clandestine ambition must now bow to the light of justice. Margaret's journey from passive acceptance to proactive investigation was not just a testament to her strength, but also to an indomitable will to see justice served. Together with allies old and new, she forged forward, anchored in the belief that the truth, however elusive, would emerge victorious. With the investigation now rolling forward like a steam engine through a fog-laden track, the presence of Detective Garcia casts long shadows across Margaret's determined path. In this complex dance of suspicion and evidence, Detective Garcia is both an anchor and a storm. His arrival signals the weight of officialdom, a signal that this is no longer a private battle but one that plays out on a broader stage with an audience of justice seekers and truth-bearers. The corridors of the law enforcement office buzz with activity, much like the family's saga, intricate, charged, leading toward a narrow beam of hope flickering at the tunnel's end. Margaret stands at the threshold of a different room each day, the air heavy with the scent of loss, mingling with righteous fury and steely resolve. She is poised on the knife edge of past and future, illuminated by the flickering embers of determination. Her grandson Lucas becomes the silent pillar she leans on, his youthful innocence, marred by the dark wave that has swept through their lives, yet unbroken testament to the resilience that often hides in the heart's quiet chambers. As Garcia unravels layer after opaque layer of what might be a malevolent plot, Margaret is left grappling with interior storms, her emotions a turbulent sea, each wave towering with questions unanswered and justice yet served. The investigation demands she wear the garment of patience, an attire alien to her desperate soul craving closure. With hands tied by the protocol, Margaret watches as every detail is scrutinized under the harsh light of legality. Garcia's diligent efforts bring to light the labyrinthine complexity of the situation, Carla's actions painted in hues of suspicion that Margaret deep down feared all along. She must bear witness to each revelation, scrutinizing the past for clues that eluded her, each memory a haunting echo of an era that promised peace but delivered turmoil. Margaret's assurance lies in the resolve not only of Detective Garcia, but in the network of allies that has gathered around her, each a thread in this intricate web of consequence and justice. Her son Thomas's foresight, an unexpected boon, guides much of the investigation, his preemptive measures becoming the keystone to what she hopes will be a bastion of truth and vindication. As authorities sift through the fabric of deceit, Margaret's cooperation and openness serve as constant reminders of her unyielding spirit. Yet beneath this steely demeanor lies the raw, pulsating pain of a mother mourning a son, a grandmother shielding her grandson from the shadows of their past. Lucas's presence is balm and motivation, his young mind grasping the fragmented pieces of his world with an understanding beyond his years, a childhood eclipsed by secrets and revelations. Their shared routines punctuate the otherwise chaotic tempo of their lives, forms of normalcy in a world uprooted by grief and suspicion. Lucas's school projects and soccer games break their tumultuous string of engagements with the harsh world they've been thrust into, a gentle regression into innocence amid chaos. Precisely through these small moments, Margaret finds the granules of strength needed to forge forward to face another day brimming with uncertainty and expectation. Concurrently, the weight of the investigation settles uncomfortably into their reality. Margaret's pride and peace teeter with each revelation as emotions oscillate between hope and despair, each finding voice in her conversations echoing across the walls that have silently watched a family unravel and begin to mend. As Garcia peels back the layers, a patient surgeon of law dissecting Carla's cunning cover-ups, Margaret prepares herself for the eventuality hitherto unwritten into her life's narrative. Every new piece of evidence frames Carla differently in Margaret's mind, exposing a hidden narrative most foul and treacherous, interwoven with greed and betrayal. This window into the possible subterfuge does not escape Lucas's young world. His processing of events recalibrates daily. Guided by conversations, he overhears snippets of hushed exchanges hanging heavy in the house like an unpleasant perfume. He, like his grandmother, is sculpted by the fire of adversity. This chapter writes itself into his formative years, inky tendrils of past decisions staining his otherwise unmarked canvas. Eager for closure yet bound by the slow machinations of legal proceedings, Margaret studies Lucas with renewed purpose, seeing within him not just family continuity, but a reflection of enduring love and the potential for healing wounds yet raw from scarring battles. As Detective Garcia's investigation marches relentlessly forward, Margaret remains steadfast, knowing that this chapter of loss and yearning for justice coalesces within the broader epic of a grandmother's resilience, Lucas's growth, and a family's steadfast pursuit of redemption and healing. Margaret's heart skips a beat. The chilling realization hits her with the force of a tidal wave as she rushes home to discover the empty echo of Lucas's absence. Every fiber of her being trembles under the weight of this new crisis. Carla's flight, wild with fear and self-preservation, has shattered what little semblance of normalcy remained. The vulnerability and panic claw at Margaret's insides, threatening to overwhelm her, but she can't afford to falter. Determined focus is all she has now, her heart pushing her feet faster down the road she never imagined walking. Her mind races to the sound of Detective Garcia's phone ringing, the single mantra repeating like a lifeline, "Lucas must be found." Garcia, as a stalwart guardian of justice, is informed, launching a search that stretches across county lines, his team charged with the singular mission of finding the boy safe. Carla, her steps silent and calculated, moves like a shadow across the terrain of their family history, leaving traces of confusion and desperation in her wake. It's a game of hide and seek, where consequence and logic collide with the raw human drive for survival. Carla's actions are woven from threads of desperation, an elaborate tapestry born out of fear of the looming shadows of consequence. She clutches Lucas closely, a living shield and the pawn in her fear-laden escape. Her every decision swaddled in the mist of panic where rationality is eclipsed by the primal instinct to run. Fueling her flight is the anxiety of being caught, the anticipation of the truth crashing down around her like a varied storm of reckoning. Every tick of the clock rings louder in Margaret's ears, a constant reminder of the increasing distance between her and the boy she holds dearer than her own breath. But this isn't just about recovery, it's about recognition. Lucas, young and impressionable, is spiritually and emotionally entwined into her life. Her driving force is not just the duty to protect him, but the fierce love that defines her very existence. The legal net tightens with alerts broadcast and jurisdictions cooperating under the looming pressure of time. Yet each hour blends into the next, a tapestry of tenseness, stretching between the relentless searchers and an increasingly cornered Carla. The nature of Carla's transit, erratic and disjointed, signals the fragmentation of her plans, while also revealing the pattern of her psychological turmoils and her deteriorating grip on sanity. Margaret's every breath is a silent prayer, each heartbeat a pledge of resilience, as she confronts the weight of a past intertwined with today's chaos. She knows Lucas's impressionable mind is shipwrecked upon the jagged shoals of adult deception and betrayal. The urgency of locating him is mixed with the passionate drive to restore clarity and safety to his young life. Lucas, in his kidnapped silence, is a reluctant sailor upon the stormy seas Carla has set sail on. His instincts tell him, this journey holds no vibrant tomorrows, but he is a child trapped in a situation he cannot fully grasp, buffeted by the wave of his mother's deceitful desperation. His silent hope is anchored in the love etched in his memory of moments with his grandmother that promised safety and warmth. Each moment spent tracking Carla feels like a dance on razor's edge for the authorities and for Margaret. As days blur into nights, hope becomes a force shaped by steadiness and persistence, sculpted from the tenacity lodged deeply within her soul. The strain infuses every conversation while Margaret clings to the sparse shreds of connectivity, a clue here, a possible sighting there, all serving as beacons lighting her way through the oppressive darkness. Slowly, the net draws ever tighter, inching closer to unravel the chaos of Carla's trajectory. It is a game defined by strategy and Lawrence of luck, a defining struggle where each player's motivation is buried within layers of circumstance. The approach to resolution is a journey not confined to the physical but etched unmistakably within the spiritual and psychological confines of human understanding. And so as Margaret stands on the precipice of timing and intuition, there exists a world unfurled before her in which she must tread carefully. Each step is not merely a march towards regained normalcy, but the accumulated wisdom of confronting hardships with resilience. Her pursuit is not just for Lucas, but for the hope that healing roles yet to be played. The line drawn here is not just one of jurisdiction, but one carving through the depths of perception and endurance, drawing Margaret and her family towards the dawn of what will redefine them. In the corridors of justice, where the clamor of human frailty echoes most profoundly, Margaret finds herself both an aggrieved matron and a fervent seeker of truth. Carla's arrest marks a pivotal juncture, one that unfurls a panorama of tangled emotions woven from threads of betrayal, remorse, and painful clarity. The grim task now is to unthread the fabric of deceit that Carla and Gregory meticulously fashioned, revealing the beating heart of the conspiracy against Thomas. As the legal system grinds into motion, Margaret becomes a passive participant in an emotional edifice battered by so many questions and too few answers. Yet there's no denying the tangled psyche of Carla, a woman ensnared by her own imprudent ambitions and misguided loyalties. With her veneer of composure cracked open, Carla's confession tumbles forth a kaleidoscope of guilt shaped by her entanglement with Gregory, her brother, an accomplice who lent his conniving expertise to the malevolent plot that ended Thomas's life. Her revelation is a grim tourniquet on the wound of Margaret's hope, a revelation that promises justice, but heralds recognition of the deeper machinations of those she once trusted. Through Carla's fragmented and reluctant admission of culpability, the nature of complicity sharpens into focus a familial betrayal threaded with shades of coercion and desperation. The nuances of her confession form a tapestry of poignant paradox, her remorse not just a plea for absolution but an acknowledgement of navigating deeper moral abysses. Here unfolds an examination not solely of justice but an intersection where guilt wrestles with sympathy, where emotional contritions pour forth into the unrelenting demands of restitution. The weight of Carla's confession bears heavily on Margaret and Lucas, rippling through their lives with the force of seismic clarity. For Margaret, it is an emotional crucible where resolve compels her to stride toward justice while grappling with the surreal dimensions of trust shattered and rebuilt. As a grandmother, she becomes a guiding light for Lucas, a young mind too familiar now with the sharp edges of treachery and justice. Her role evolves beyond pursuit of legal recourse. It transforms into crafting a narrative of redemption framed within their familial compass, overshadowed by both the stories of those who transgress and those who persevere. Within this tableau, Margaret's own journey takes center stage. Hers is not merely a struggle for the sake of law and order, a dichotomy played out on the canvas of courtroom drama, but a saga of reclaiming a sense of familial dignity. The quest for justice increasingly intersects with the emotional tapestry of loss and legacy. As Margaret forges ahead, she bears witness to how grief becomes an unbidden muse, shaping her strength and resolve. The past is no longer a shadow pressing down, but a narrative thread, woven into the fabric of the present and the future, yet to unfold. The unfolding drama captures the courtroom's essence, a theater for the collective unveiling of burdens borne by Margaret Lucas and the specters of the past. Carla's remorse-laden revelations spill into the stark, unyielding sanctum of legal examination, painting her as both victim and perpetrator, her dual roles, evoking reflections on the destructive dance of familial allegiance turned adversarial. The process navigates the liminal space where the veil of respectability is yanked away, revealing the rawness of aspiration and the desperation that fueled their descent into duplicity. As the case unravels, the intricacies of human intent and consequence are splayed open for judgment. The legal labyrinth challenges not only Carla's culpability, but the stark reality of human fallibility, peeling away perceptions, revealing truths nestled in the gray zones of moral existence. For Margaret and Lucas, these courtroom skirmishes serve as a testament to fortitude amid betrayal, a crucible of resilience where once close bonds are rendered anew through forgiveness and justice. Carla, in the aftermath of her confession, embodies a complex portrait of remorse, her narrative one of redemptive struggle, not just in the eyes of the law but within the recesses of her own conscience. The terminus of justice and reconciliation lies not only in the erudite adjudication of men's laws, but illuminates the far-reaching spirit of family legacy, enduring in the grief-chiseled faces that bear the weight of betrayal yet remain unbroken. Thus, as Margaret and Lucas navigate these troubled waters, they embody a resonant truth. Resurrection from such a crucible of betrayal and guilt is not free of scars, but is imbued with a deeper understanding of love's endurance. Justice, therefore, becomes not an end, but a passage, one lined with lessons of resilience, one where healing and humanity's plaintive melody interweave, for Margaret knows that her legacy and Thomas's will be sheltered in the lessons, born from their united struggle and unwavering love. As the verdict hung in the charged air of the courtroom dammed by the silence, the gravity of judgment seeped into every corner, every soul. The conclusion of the case against Gregory Davis signaled an end to the legal ordeal, yet emotional tremors were only beginning to ripple through the lives of those involved. The jurors filed out, leaving behind fragments of decisions that had knitted justice and tragedy together in an ironic tapestry. Margaret and Lucas, their faces etched with stoic resolve, digested the jurors' decision as a complex cocktail of justice administration, personal redemption, and the inescapable narrative of human fallibility. As they sat there, a storm of conflicting emotions wove through their minds. Justice might have been served in the courtroom, but it didn't erase the pain nor the loss. Margaret's heart ached with a maternal longing that could never be fully satisfied again. For Lucas, the legal machinery that churned so loudly finally quieted, leaving a mere boy to navigate the labyrinth of confusion that accompanied the youth marred by adult deception. Both understood that while the law dissected and examined, it could never prescribe solace or erase the scar tissue of betrayal woven into their family fabric. Emerging from the solemnity of the courthouse, Margaret felt the weight of the trial's conclusion settle into the crevices of her resolve. With the legal haze clearing, she turned her attention inward, focusing on the emotional and psychological rehabilitation that lay ahead. Determination brewed within her, an unyielding promise to use the ordeal as a compass, guiding her towards fortification rather than desolation. She found refuge in perspective, committing to live not as a victim, but as an architect of the future. The justice system had done its part. Now it was time for personal healing, a quieter yet equally demanding journey. Lucas looked to Margaret, his beacon of strength, searching for meaning in this quagmire of emotions. In the depths of confusion, he found solace in Margaret's resolve, her nurturing spirit unfazed by adversity. The courtroom's finality juxtaposed with the open-ended question of what comes next. Together they were to navigate a world forever altered, reconstructed on foundations shaken by deceit, yet resilient due to unforgettable lessons learned from loss and love. In time, the remnants of courtroom battles faded, leaving Margaret and Lucas to confront the demands of daily life shaped anew. As they reconstructed their routines, they found themselves encountering whispers of healing, small signs of normalcy that felt like victory within the mundane. Lucas returned to school, where the rhythm of academia became a comforting hum against the dissonance of his fractured adolescence. He leaned into friendships, formed from shared resilience, learning the art of focusing forward despite shadows cast by the past. Margaret, too, sought balm in companionship. She met Hector, a fellow attendee of a support group who shared his own stories of loss, tinged with cautious optimism for the future. Their connection, gradual but profound, symbolized the resilience of the human spirit and the undeniable power of shared understanding. With Hector, Margaret found herself rediscovering laughter, a sound she worried had vanished from her repertoire. What bloomed between them was not just affection, but a partnership steeped in support and shared laughter, hues thoroughly missed from her palette of life. As they ventured ever forward, Margaret realized that the most precious inheritance to offer Lucas was not wealth measured in worldly goods, but the treasure of resilience, compassion, and the unwavering support of family bonds. She endeavored to instill in him the courage to seek truth, foster empathy, and above all, to love fiercely despite fear. This legacy, woven over time, wittily navigated between honoring the past and wholeheartedly embracing future possibilities. Not all wounds healed seamlessly. The occasional reminder of Carla's actions cast shadows, yet it was in these moments that Margaret and Lucas harnessed an illuminating truth. They were not undone by the betrayal, but awakened to the profound strength of their unified spirit. Forgiveness nestled next to enduring love and comprehension of one's complex web of intentions, a silent pact that eased their path forward. In relinquishing past grievances, Margaret accepted the intertwined nature of past and future, leaving open doors of possibility for whatever lay ahead. She trusted Lucas with a familial legacy wrapped in lessons learned from adversity, poised on the fulcrum of hope and wisdom, born not just from courtroom battles, but from the ordinary courage of living authentically onward. In the aftermath of the trial, as the echoes of closing statements faded into whispers of courtroom suspense, Margaret found herself standing at the crossroads of past tribulations and the veiled uncertainty of the future. The verdict had been delivered. Justice, it seemed, had found a semblance of its rightful place, albeit within the labyrinthine complexities of the legal system. Yet no gavel could erase the scars etched into the fabric of her life or reconstruct the shattered pieces of a family once whole, now forever altered by betrayal and loss. Lucas emerged from the courtroom, bearing the invisible weight of newfound realities, dimensions of truth thrust upon him in the formative years meant for innocence. Margaret recognized his silence not merely as the quietude of thought, but as the whisper of wounds deep and abiding, revealing themselves in the darkness of sleepless nights and invisible lines upon a youthful brow. She saw herself in his struggle, a reflection of the resilience she sought tirelessly to instill. Together they began to navigate the subtle dance of healing, not as something linear or prescriptive, but as an ever-evolving journey requiring faith in possibilities yet unseen. Challenges appeared like specters, haunting the periphery of progress: Lucas's silent withdrawal into the solace of virtual worlds, the shadows in his eyes when Thomas's name surfaced in conversation, the lingering whispers of doubt that trailed them both. These were the residues of events unfolding beyond Margaret's control, yet she remained resolute, guiding him through the complex tapestry of emotion with patience and love that knows no bounds. Margaret found solace beyond the confines of their shared pain, investing hours in the small, deliberate acts that construct new beginnings, planting rows of marigolds along the garden's edge, each bloom a testament to life's renewal, its ability to thrive despite adversity. And there was Hector, a lighthouse amidst the fog of uncertainty, whose own experiences mirrored these trials. His steady presence served as a balm to Margaret's weary heart, reminding her not of what was lost, but of what persisted, the untouched potential of a future still uncharted, a reminder that empathy, when extended, creates connections that transcend singular anguish. Psychologically, she understood this phase as a confrontation with complexity. It was more than just coping. It involved grappling with a multiplicity of emotions and nurturing resilience, step by measured step. Margaret began to thread narratives of empowerment into everyday conversations with Lucas, fostering dialogues about openness and strength rooted in vulnerability. She was determined to help him reframe his composure from one of reactive defensiveness to thoughtful introspection. Her own knowledge of psychology guided her here, teaching Lucas to cultivate an inner strength robust enough to withstand society's often brutal judgments. Externally, she busied herself with the procedural aspects of restitution, ensuring that her son's foresight in matters of estate provided the security intended for their future. Margaret also confronted lingering whispers of distrust within the community, the murmurings of morality that often accompany high-profile trials. She addressed each concern with the dignity of experience, turning rumor into opportunity for broader understanding, becoming an advocate for familial justice and healing within her own right. Lucas found himself not through the abrupt application of change, but the gradual emergence of self-awareness against the backdrop of support and guidance. Margaret encouraged him to explore artistic outlets as mediums for expression. His sketches began to narrate stories where words felt cumbersome, revealing an internal dialogue that unveiled both ache and aspiration. These were moments of quiet triumph for Margaret, adding threads of hope to her evolving tapestry of legacy, weaving Lucas's burgeoning empathy and creativity into the framework she aimed to leave. In these interactions, Margaret practiced the delicate balance between acknowledging the past while intentionally moving towards a future unmarred by bitterness. Their narrative together centered on redefining familial connections, not bound by blood alone but understood in the context of chosen alliances like that with Hector that embody trust, respect, and shared vision. It was through these connections that Margaret found the basis for reintegrating her sense of self. As they forged ahead, Margaret and Lucas learned to face the world with resolve, carrying the memories of Thomas as both honor and impetus. The echoes of the past no longer constrained them. Instead, they served as reminders of resilience born from pain. Within each sigh born of breath and hope, Margaret silently vowed to remain vigilant, guiding Lucas toward understanding the fine lines between justice and vengeance, sorrow and strength, pain and progress. And in the quiet confidence of that promise, the narrative of their lives continued to unfold. Margaret found herself in a pivotal stage of life, one that required her to redefine her sense of belonging and purpose amid the remnants of the past. Amidst the turbulent sea of memories and recent upheavals, a beacon of change appeared in the form of Hector. Hector was a fellow grandparent who entered Margaret's life through the casual camaraderie of shared spaces at community events, and there was something undeniably reassuring about his presence. Their paths were similar yet unique, two seasoned souls who had weathered the complex storms of family dynamics. Hector, too, carried the weight of familial expectation and personal history that had not always been easy. Yet he embraced life with a vigor that Margaret found both comforting and inspiring. It was in the simple conversations under the shaded shelters of neighborhood gatherings that the first seeds of companionship were sown. These exchanges were like small doses of healing, nudging Margaret softly towards envisioning a life where hope and renewal were not just possibilities, but real, actionable steps. Their relationship, as it blossomed, underscored the power of human connection and the essential need for companionship that transcends traditional roles and relationships. They found a curious joy in discovering shared interests, simple pleasures such as attending local plays, exploring art shows, and even tending community gardens. Through these activities, Margaret and Hector nurtured a shared vision, allowing the pain of the past to be softened by present joy. Margaret began to appreciate the nuances of a partnership built on mutual respect and the freedom to be completely oneself without pretense. As her heart flourished under Hector's attentive presence, Margaret recognized the protective barriers she'd unknowingly crafted around her emotions over years of turmoil. It was a revelation that encouraged her to slowly dismantle these barriers and embrace the vulnerability that comes with genuine connections. Perched at the periphery of this emerging connection was Margaret's past, a specter that lingered silently, occasionally brimming with echoes of unresolved emotions and unsaid goodbyes. Hector knew this shadow intimately, having faced similar foes in his lifetime, and respected Margaret's journey at her pace. He offered a quiet assurance that this budding relationship could coexist alongside Margaret's deepest griefs, unthreatened by the intricacies of her past. As they formed a companionship that felt like a balm to long-standing wounds, Margaret realized that love and family could be redefined. With Hector by her side, she was able to craft a flexible definition of family, one that was inclusive rather than exclusive, embracing those chosen bonds that brought meaning to her life, instead of clinging to blood ties that have long since faded. It wasn't a replacement for her lost son, but a new page that added texture and richness to her life. Margaret also saw the importance of infusing this perspective into her relationship with her grandson Lucas. Her experience with Hector illuminated for her the crucial lesson of teaching Lucas that family extends beyond the constraints of lineage and tradition. This period of rejuvenation in Margaret's life was also about transitioning these lessons to Lucas, guiding him through the labyrinth of complex emotions and relationships that he too was beginning to navigate. Margaret encouraged Lucas to keep an open heart, allowing him to see that life's relationships, while sometimes fraught with difficulty, could still be sources of incomparable joy and strength. Through this renewed outlook, Margaret found herself thanking the resilience that had carried her through the darkest days. It was a quiet acknowledgement of the power of forgiveness and understanding, even when directed towards oneself. She realized that her journey with Hector was a catalyst, a gentle reminder that life in its cyclical nature continually presents opportunities for growth, for relearning love, and for reimagining one's identity beyond the framework of societal norms and personal history. The companionship with Hector not only provided Margaret with a new lease on life, but also with the courage to believe in the potential of new beginnings. It was a journey that spoke to the indomitable spirit of human connection, one that could weave the tattered threads of the past into a tapestry strong enough to withstand future storms. Through this journey alongside Hector, Margaret's narrative shifted from one of survival through betrayal and loss to a testament of healing, courage, and the transformative power of love in forging new paths forward. Margaret stood on the threshold of her new reality, a juncture where resilience and hope stitched the frayed edges of her past into a mindful tapestry of the future. In the wake of the monumental courtroom drama, the dust had yet to fully settle, leaving behind a landscape marred by both emotional trial and a newfound clarity. This journey was never just about reclaiming her dignity or justice for her son Thomas. It had become a profound exploration into the core of human relationships, trust, betrayal, and love that encompassed her very essence. Amidst the turmoil with Carla and the aftermath of the trial, Margaret's relationship with her grandson Lucas took center stage. It was as if life's circumstances had conspired to bind them together more strongly than ever before. The courage to confront and expose betrayal in their family had given Lucas an unexpected education in the complexities of human emotions. In him, Margaret saw a delicate balance of fear, anger, and hope, a tender soul grappling with the weight of adult truths thrust too soon into his world. As Margaret guided Lucas through their shared labyrinth of emotions, she stressed a poignant truth that family and love were not confined by blood, but rather defined by shared experiences and mutual care. Lucas, having witnessed the unraveling of his familial ideals, took to this teaching with the heart of someone seeking solace and understanding. It was her responsibility to ensure Lucas emerged from this ordeal with a heart resilient enough to trust again, yet prudent enough to learn from past missteps. Their shared time was an amalgamation of heartening conversations, quiet reflections, and the deliberate forging of new memories. Margaret's gentle strength became a beacon for Lucas, offering him not just a sanctuary, but a lens through which he could view the world with a renewed perspective. Over hot chocolates and evening walks, they pondered life's deeper meanings, contemplating what it truly means to forgive and how one might achieve peace without sacrificing the core principles of justice and truth. Margaret understood that forgiveness did not imply forgetting or condoning the wrongdoings suffered. Instead, it was an act of releasing oneself from the burdens of past grievances, a liberating gesture for one's own peace. It was a sentiment she imparted on Lucas, hoping he would carry it with him as both armor and balm, allowing him continuity and growth. Yet, entwined with forgiveness, she also taught him the necessity of setting boundaries, a critical lesson learned from her own trials, to maintain one's integrity and peace. Living once more under the same sky with Carla added a layer of complexity to their navigation of family dynamics. Margaret, conscious of Lucas's need for stability in his relationships, chose a path of cautious reconciliation. It was a balancing act, a delicate dance to retain her own moral compass while allowing Lucas to nurture his understanding of familial bonds and the nuances of forgiveness and accountability. The dimensions of their family shifted to accommodate new additions. With the companionship of Hector, Margaret found her heart expanding with the possibility of joy, love, and renewed experiences. Hector's steady presence provided a comforting sanctuary, his shared journey resonating deeply with her own. It was through this connection that Margaret further demonstrated to Lucas the enduring nature of hope and the promise held in new beginnings. As they navigated the terrain of family visits and blended gatherings, Lucas observed with watchful eyes, absorbing lessons about love's persistence beyond betrayal, the value of communication, and the sometimes awkward, sometimes seamless transition that life demanded. Margaret took care to create a space where laughter was not a foreign visitor, but a familiar companion, one that Lucas could learn to embrace genuinely once more. The lessons embedded in their shared history became a guidepost for Lucas's future interactions. Margaret, witnessing the light return to Lucas's eyes, realized this journey's true legacy, her grandson's growth into a person capable of facing life's adversities with transparency, empathy, and resolve. For Margaret, this was a living testament to the potential of transforming suffering into a legacy of resilience and strength. As they stood on the brink of new possibilities, their story, one flavored with rebirth and reconciliation, offered a narrative of empowerment, highlighting the triumph of the human spirit when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds. Margaret and Lucas, each in their own right, became custodians of this inherited wisdom, forging paths lit by past experiences, but unshackled by their shadows. The house, once filled with noise and chaos, now sat in silence, an emblem of solitude glistening in the dusk. Carla, once so full of conniving energy, now wandered its echoing halls where every click of a light switch seemed to carry the weight of her scheme's collapse. The grand plans she once nurtured had crumbled, leaving nothing but shadows of resentment clinging to the empty corners. She stood alone, haunted by the whispers of past deceit, holding nothing but echoes where dreams of power once resided. Margaret had emerged from this storm, transformed, not just a victor by circumstance, but one shaped by a deeper understanding of endurance and quiet strength. She had navigated through deception, threaded through the intricacies of the legal battle, and stood firm through the family's unraveling truths. The Margaret who once longed to speak out now found her power in silence. It became her kingdom, a realm of serenity from which she could view the chaos with clear, steady eyes. No longer driven by the thirst for revenge, Margaret cultivated a stillness within one that fostered growth and reflection. It was a silence filled not with emptiness but with purpose, a carefully tended garden where hope flourished anew. In this lucid calm she discovered the true essence of freedom, that profound calm one finds after the storm has passed. Silence became the language of healing, an affirmation of her journey and an acceptance of life's inscrutable flow. And as silence drew its gentle veil over the upheavals of the past, you might find yourself touched by its quiet power. Would you too have the patience to wait to let silence fill the void where words might have crowded in? Could you trust in time's ability to carve out space for truth, to allow consequences to echo until they settle naturally into the quiet? In the depths of this reflective quietude, there are no grand revelations, no need for words to clutter what the heart already knows. The simplicity of existence, the play of light across a quiet room, the gentle creak of a floorboard becomes the chorus of a life renewed, untainted by the burdens of spoken remorse or unresolved vendettas. Margaret's journey and the echoes of her story speak through the silence, resonating with the enduring truths of humanity. Choices have been made, paths forged, yet life remains unscripted, unfolding with each breath drawn in the quiet of an open, empty room. Here one finds forgiveness, not through declarations or dramatic gestures, but through the act of unlocking the door to new beginnings. Peace finds its voice in the gentle sigh of closure, where the past no longer dictates the confines of tomorrow. And so, with each step retraced through the memories of betrayal and renewal, Margaret finds her narrative not in victory, but in the balance of forgiveness freely given and acceptance embraced. Her story envelops all around her in serene finality, a closing not of endings, but of continued journeys taking root in silence. As the final beams of the setting sun cast their warm glow through the newly opened door, one is left to ponder the serene solemnity of this unspoken rebirth. Some endings do not erupt in fanfare or the clamor of triumph. They whisper, profoundly sacred in their restraint, a gentle reminder that sometimes the most profound transformations are those that occur in silence, and closure is not an end, but a serene beginning.